The world keeps evolving. The times keep changing. The new generation of technology. The new generation of information. They bring the future before us. Institut Teknologi 10 November, a place where the spirit of heroism underlies the new generation to research and innovate in technology. The University of Heroes, ITS. ITS is one of the best science and technology universities in Indonesia, which was founded by Dr. Angga in 1957. In every step, ITS focuses in advancing education, research, management, and community service. As an incorporated public university, ITS has been able to manage autonomously the policy of academics, organizations, finance, students' affairs, human resources, facilities, operational, and infrastructure.
In the spirit of Indonesian heroes, during the battle in the 10th of November 1945, ITS always makes efforts to be the best in education, research, and community services, especially in the fields of industry and maritime. ITS also actively contributes to the nation development, and in the future, ITS will become an entrepreneurial university with world-class reputation.
ITS has many achievements. Both national and international achievements prove that ITS keeps growing and gives the best contribution to the nation of Indonesia. ITS is a place for new hopes to grow. An ideal environment for the new generation to flourish in 3 strategic locations within the industrial city of Surabaya. As a smart eco-campus, ITS maintains harmony between technological advances and the sustainability of the surrounding ecosystem. ITS has 7 faculties with prospective scientific fields, including Scientics, INSIS, Vocation, Creatis, MarTech, Electrics, Plan. ITS is a space for the new generation who are hungry for knowledge because it provides a wide range of references in both physical and digital form. ITS makes it easier for the new generation to access information by providing flexible classes. ITS keeps moving forward in facing future challenges by providing the best facilities for the new generation's activities. The facilities support both spiritual and physical needs. ITS also provides research facilities in the ITS Science Technopark, including ICT and robotics, automotive, maritime, and creative industries. Therefore, the excellent generations from ITS will emerge and make history. ITS is a space for the new generation to express themselves. ITS is a place where the new generation learns new things and finds their purpose. ITS has become a place where the new generations that carry the future will be born.
ITS is a campus of science and technology, which focuses on the research and innovation, presenting technology for prosperity.
With a spirit of heroism, ITS brings the future before us. ITS, the University of Heroes.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, before we start commence the program, and here are the following webinar protocol. For each participant ID, please use your real name following with your origin of institution. All of participants are expected to mute the audio and only unmute the video during the event. We cordially invite you to take your own firm and comfort seat in your own room, and please avoid the backlight. Make sure that you have a good and stable internet connection. If you have an earphone or headset, we recommend you to use it so that your voice can clearly and loudly to be heard. During the Q&A discussion session, all participants, please use the chat box to deliver the questions. Thank you for your cooperation and consideration.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Guest Lecture Series on SDGs Today, Tuesday, 22nd of June 2021. I am Oriza from ITAS Global Engagement, and I will be your Master of Ceremony this afternoon. Thank you for joining our Guest Lecture Series on SDGs Today. Before we start our agenda, let me inform you of some important information for today's event. First, please fill your attendance at bit.ly/attendance_GLS SDGs. Our committee also sent the attendance link in the Zoom chat room. For participants who wish to get the e-certificate and stamp, please fill the attendance 15 minutes after the session starts. Second, participants who wish to ask questions during the question and answer session, please send your questions to intip.in/Q&A/stream2GLS SDGs. The link for asking questions is also sent in the chat room. Or you can ask directly by clicking the raise hand feature or send it in the Zoom chat room. Ladies and gentlemen, this guest lecture series on SDGs is dedicated as a form of appreciation and commemorating the 60th anniversary of the Institut Teknologi 10 November Surabaya. Today's guest lecture brings the topic of partnering with stakeholders to achieve public value. That will be delivered by our honorable speaker, Dr. Ramona Blanes from the University of Glasgow. And today's lecture will be moderated by Dr. Nurina Orta Darmawanti from Institut Teknologi 10 November. Before we start our agenda, allow me to deliver our schedule today as follows. First, opening. Second, introduction to moderator. Third, lecture session by Dr. Ramona Blanes. Fourth, question and answer session. Fifth, certificate awarding. And lastly, closing. Now, before we proceed to the main agenda, which is the lecture, let me introduce our moderator. Dr. Nurina Orta Darmawanti is currently a lecturer at Visual Communication Design Department at Institut Teknologi 10 November. In terms of her educational background, she received her bachelor's degree from ITS and her master's degree from Institut Teknologi Bandung. She is highly experienced in the field as she was part of the research and development team for ITS website redesign. And also, she was a recipient of the Erasmus Plus Mobility Teaching Program to Anadolu University, Turkey. Her research interests are design research method, technology for social transformation, and public health. Without further ado, I would like to give it to the moderator, Dr. Nurina Orta Darmawanti. The time is yours.
Thank you very much, Oriza. And hello, everyone. I welcome you to this guest lecture series. And today we have Dr. Ramona Blanes. I will say hello, Dr. Ramona Blanes. It's a pleasure to have you here in our online lectures. And for today's topic, we will talk about partnering with stakeholders to achieve public value. We have Dr. Ramona Blanes from the University of Glasgow. First, maybe before we start the lecture, I will read Dr. Ramona CV. Okay, she has PhD in the research explore the concept of public value and public sector reforms through the lens of intelligent transportation systems. And it's also interesting, Dr. Ramona is specializing in Islamic banking and finance. It's very interesting. And the next is, she is an active lecturer in international business and services management. Dr. Ramona also member of the Services and Operations Management Research Cluster, and she got in 2002 a Citigroup Global Quality Award, and in 2 following years in 1997 and 1998 she got Citibank Global Relationship Awards. Okay, and also for you, all of you here who have research interests in areas, especially in business ethics, financial services and technologies, public value, public sector reform, or reverse innovation, well, you should join the lecture until the end. And I encourage you to have question and answer because we have the expert on its fields. Okay. I think that's all for the safe introduction. And I assume that all the participants already know about the how to ask question. You can ask on the link provided in the chat box. So enjoy the guest lecture. I think that's all for the introduction and the ground rules. Now it's your time, Professor Ramona. You have 60 minutes for presentation, and then we have around 30 minutes for question and answer. Now, if you want to share, you could share your screen with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Nurina. Selamat sejahtera, everyone. Apa kabar? Thank you for inviting me to share my knowledge on this. As you can see, my name is Ramona Blanes. Now, you can call me Bu Ramona. I would prefer if we can do this informally. I see that we don't have that many participants, so it's even better. We can do this informally. I am, let me just share my PowerPoint and can I just check that you can see my slideshow?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, now.
De DC315 MP2 is niet meer in de handel. En kan niet meer besteld worden helaas. Nee.
Okay, so I'm a retired investment banker, and I am now teaching, as Bu Nurina mentioned, teaching at the Adam Smith Business School at the University of Glasgow in Scotland. Yeah. So I see myself more as a practitioner than an academic because I spent most of my life in the industry than I am now in academia. Now, you can see that from the awards that I've given, those are during my time in the industry. Now, anyway, I have been asked to give you a talk on partnering with stakeholders to achieve public value. So what I'll do is I will attempt to share my knowledge and experience in this topic and would welcome your input, your perspectives, and your experience in the same as well. I understand that there are participants from other countries other than Indonesians, so I will give this talk mainly in English. But if you so wish to ask me questions in Bahasa Indonesia, please do so. But I have to warn you that my Bahasa Indonesia is very bad. I learned the language from TV and from songs. So, I can only sing it or, I do drama about it. But more than welcome to put your questions on the chat in Bahasa Indonesia. And if somebody can let me know there's something on the chat, I will check it and then we'll try and answer it as much as possible. Now, the agenda, just to give you a framework of my talk today, I will start off by showing a slide on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which I am sure everyone here is familiar with. Then I will introduce you my main research topic of interest today, which is public value, and how this can be applied to the service provision process. And finally, I will touch on how we could embed the public value concept in decision making. So as I mentioned before, I would like this to be an informal discussion. So if you do have questions, put them in the chat or just unmute yourself, put up your hand, unmute yourself and ask me the questions. And I will try to address them as best as I could. So before we start, is there any other question about me from anybody? Or are we all good to go? So don't be shy, okay? Jangan malu-malu. We are here to learn and share knowledge. So jangan malu-malu. Please stop me if you think I'm speaking too fast, because I've been living in the UK for too long, specifically in Scotland for too long. I tend to speak too quickly, so please do ask me. So the agenda, not the agenda. So I just want to show this slide to remind us of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Now, I am sure that all of you are familiar with it, and some may be even more familiar than I am on these projects. So my question to you, and please type your answer in the chat. Do you think we can meet these goals because Indonesia has agreed to be one of the participants to address all these goals. So do you think we can meet these goals if the public sector agencies are to manage the projects themselves? So if you can type your answers in the chat. Can the public agencies do this themselves? Let me check the chat. Is there any answers in the chat? So can you understand the question? So Indonesia has agreed to make sure that they minimize poverty, minimize hunger, improve the quality of education. I think in the video earlier, your rector has spoken about how he wants to improve the education and then improve the industry, the innovation and infrastructure. So your rector actually spoke about SDG 4 and SDG 9. Do you think the public sector agency, so the government can do this by themselves? Anybody? Any answer in the chat? No? Okay, Putri says, I think people other than government need to help too. Okay. And Ori, thank you, Ori, said, don't think so. Kiki says, no, I think collaboration is needed. So I think we're all in the same track here. In my opinion, it is near impossible for public sector to manage these SDGs, these Sustainable Development Goals themselves. To achieve these goals, we need to work together with other stakeholders. And I believe that's the reason why I have been given this topic to talk to you today. Now, so how do we do this? There are, of course, many ways of trying to collaborate. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to introduce you to a concept called public value. Now, public value was coined by Michael Moore back in 1995 as a strategic management tool for public sector managers in the US. Now, the concept of public value has gained some interest, but from my perspective, not enough interest. I like the idea behind this concept, not just for developed nations, but also developing nations. Because in my opinion, if this concept is done right, it can address some of the issues of trust and transparency that we have in developing nations. Now, I say we have, and I say we because I've lived in the UK for more than 2 decades. But I am still Malaysian. I'm not a British citizen. I am still Malaysian. So I think it is extremely important for developing nations to try and look for things, Malaysia and Indonesia to try and look for ideas that can help the country to be improved in issues of transparency and trust that we currently have. So what is the public value concept? Anybody has an idea of what share value is? Can I see a show of hands of people who knows what share value is? Share value, I mean shareholders value. So does anybody heard of shareholders value? I'm going to type it in the chat, okay? Have you heard of shareholders value? Just show of hand. Now I'm trying to. No, nobody has heard of shareholders value? Okay. Shareholders value means values that are delivered or generated by a company to investors who own the shares in the company. So, for example, you own a share in Telkom Indonesia, for example, and then every year you get dividends, and the value of that is the dividend that you get. Okay, so the better the company do, normally the higher the dividend that you get. So that's shareholders value. Now, more simply describe public value as the equivalent of shareholder value, but in public sector management. So what he's saying is, okay, all this public sector, you look at it as if it's a company, a private sector company. And this public sector must give value to the shareholder. So the question is, what is the value and who is the shareholder? Of course, when I say simply equivalent to shareholder value, simple is probably not the right word to use, because unlike the public sector, it is more difficult to attribute owners of public sector organizations. For example, you have kementerian. Kementerian. Give me one kementerian, Pak Alvin. What kementerian can I other in Indonesia?
Is it relating with your topic?
Anything, yeah. Say Kementerian Kesehatan. There is a Kementerian Kesehatan in Indonesia, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So Kementerian Kesehatan. Who are the owners of Kementerian Kesehatan? So the concept of public value is more complex because it is more difficult to know who are the owners of Kementerian Kesehatan. Now, my generic answer to this, and this generic answer is a generic answer, it's not the right answer, but it's a generic answer, is that public sector is owned by the citizens of the company, of the country, and the taxpayers of the country. So that's my generic answer normally. So when we talk about giving value to public sectors, it means that the managers in public sector need to make sure that everything they do will give value to the people of Indonesia. Yeah. Now, that's a big ask, and that is a big question. How do you do that? So putting the onus on one side, let's take a look at this strategic triangle that I have on the PowerPoint. Now, the reason why I want to introduce this triangle is to set the context in terms of limitation. Now you'll see the top oval shape, this top oval shape here. It contains the words legitimacy and support. So this part is known as the authorizing environment. Now the authorizing environment includes all the people that public managers, when I say public managers, I mean these are the people who works in public sector and they make decisions. They can make decisions on policies, program, procedures, and activities. Okay, so that's Those are the people I mean by public manager. So the authorizing environment of the public managers are the people that they can call to account, that can call them to account. So these public managers will have to somewhat report directly or indirectly to these people. So the authorizing environment would include people like the elected representatives or the politician. So in Kementerian Kesehatan, I am sure you have a minister of health, right? So whoever is the public manager in Kementerian Kesehatan, they have bosses and eventually they have to report to the Minister of Health. So that's an example of authorizing environment. But it's not just the ministers, but it could also be the courts, the judicial, the laws, the regulations, the audit agencies, the interest groups, and even the media, because in today's world, everything is so fast. Everything can be on the internet the next second. So like this, now we are showing it on YouTube. So somebody can disagree with me on YouTube, and I don't know anything about it as yet. So these are the groups of people that I call, or Mike Moore call, the authorizing environment. And of course, behind this authorizing environment, behind these people, behind these representatives are people who are the individual citizens, the individual taxpayers, and the individual clients of the government agencies. So in an ideal world, public managers should try to increase the legitimacy and the support for any given actions by trying to get inputs and influencing the authorizing environment. Now, bear in mind also that these public managers can only act if they have been given the power or the authority to do so. That is another important factor that we need to take into consideration, and also perhaps the most important limitation of this concept. So the first limitation or factor we need to bear in mind is the level of authority given to manage or to the agency. The second limitation or factor is the operational capabilities. Now, the operational capabilities, which is the oval shape at the bottom, is how the public sector provides services to the public. So what can they do? What can they do? What are the so include things like budgets, technologies, infrastructures. Those are what we call the operational service capabilities. Staff as well. The challenge is to provide productive organizations and systems that can perform efficiently, effectively, and fairly now. So you want things to happen quickly, that it happens now rather than it happens 3 years down the road. Especially, in this COVID time, you see how things go really fast. Everything needs to happen now. And we also need to make sure that its operational capabilities will be able to learn how to do better in the future through innovation. So this provision of services can be taken singly by the public agencies. So, for example, when you are doing the COVID jabs, it is all done through the hospitals, the government hospitals. So it is being taken singly by the public agency, or it could be in collaboration with others, like some of you have suggested previously. Now, we will touch on the others later. All these are required. So the legitimacy and support and the operational capabilities are required in order to provide public value. And if you can see from the diagram that the relationships are not one way, but they rely on each other, as shown by the arrows. So we can't just say that the authorizing environment where gives legitimacy and support, and then because of that, they can provide public value. But the legitimacy and support also need to have the operational capability in order for them to provide public value, and vice versa. So if you have the operational capabilities, but you don't have the legitimacy and support, you still will not be able to provide public value. Is that okay? Does that make sense? And can you understand me? Or am I going too fast? Am I speaking too fast? Can everybody understand me? Is my English understandable? Because sometimes my English becomes a bit Scottish and then people don't understand me. Everybody okay? All right. If everybody okay, I will go to the next slide now. So to recap, we rely on authorizing environment and operational capabilities to provide public value. So in the context of my research, public value is defined as the perception of shared values consequential from direct and indirect dialogues with the public, which addresses the needs of the present and future generations. Panjang, yeah? The definition is extremely panjang, but the values that is to be considered when you talk about public value would include economic value, social values, moral values, political values, cultural values, and aesthetic values. Now, include and not limited to. So these are just some of the values that can and should be considered when you're trying to achieve public value. Now let's take a moment and think about what this definition encompasses of. One, it's the perception of shared values. Two, the information comes from direct and indirect dialogues. Three, who is the public? Oops. And four, it's the needs of today and the future. So just from that definition, you know that if you are in the public manager's shoes, this is a very big responsibility and very difficult to achieve. Now, in order to know what the public values, there need to be a dialogue, and in some form or another with the public. This, I think, is in a little bit not aligned with how we normally, when I say we, I'm talking about Malaysia, Indonesia, the traditional way of having this dialogue is normally by the elected officials, the politicians that we elect during the election, tells the public managers what people in their constituents want and need. We can say that this is one version of indirect dialogue, because we assume that the elected officials, the people that we vote for, have actually arranged to meet the people in their constituencies and understand the wants and needs. Yeah. So what do you call it? We just assume good that yes, they know exactly what the people in their kampong or the people in their village wants, and what, more importantly, what they need. So not just what they want, but what they need. Now, if you don't mind, let me be the devil's advocate for a moment. With a show of hands, how many of you have been contacted by your elected officials about a program or a policy that will impact you or your community directly? Can I have a show of hands? How many people have been contacted by your elected officials to have a discussion? Now, maybe I should ask it the other way around. How many people have not been contacted by your elected officials? So your ketua, yeah, okay. Thank you, Astria. So the mayor, have they ever contacted you to ask for your opinion? Yeah. Now, I don't know about you. Even here in the UK, yeah, I rarely get invitations for dialogues or asking for my opinions. The ones I remember are mainly related to building regulations. But I admit that there are some attempts of dialogues. But these are not from elected officials. Sorry, wrong. There are some attempts. There are dialogues, invitation to dialogues from elected official when it is near election time. Bila nak election, dia akan panggil kita, tanya, dia akan turun padang, go and visit everybody and ask for their opinions. But before election, most not. Now, so I want us here to split the elected officials and the public manager into two. So they're not they're not the same people. Think of them as two different entities, because at the end of the day, the public sector managers or the civil servants work for the public, for the people. The elected officials are also supposed to work for their elected constituents, but even though technically they have the same bosses, which is the citizens and the people who vote for the of the country and the taxpayers, but the way they are elected are different. One is elected by voting, the other one is through their jobs. So one can be moved within 5 years. One will be there forever because it's a job. So I want you to when you think about public managers, don't think of them as elected officials. So my experience with public managers is that in order for them to know what the public values, they must talk to the public. So who is the public? The public are the people who are affected directly and indirectly by the actions and services provided by the specific public agencies. I will go into more details about how to determine those affected in the next slide, but the people who might be affected will include the people in the community, which may include people like you and I, businesses, enterprises, and organizations. So on this slide, I have drawn a funnel with public managers, communities, private sector firms, and third sector organizations coming together, and from these collaborations, hopefully we will result in shared public value. Yeah. So let us now look at the process of how public sector agencies provide services. Before I start, I just want to check, is there any question on the slide before this? Do you all understand what I was saying? Yes, no? Okay, thank you, Putri. Okay, and Della. So, for the sake of simplicity, okay, what I'm showing on this slide is what we call the service provision process. So, for the sake of simplicity, let's agree that all provisions of services to the public starts with government policies, which are then turned to programs, which will then be actioned on. And when they are actioned on, then you will have the procedures and activities. So if I can show you, so we have the policies, that's number one. And then we have the program, which is number two. And then we have procedures and activities, that is basically number three, okay? The programs that you see on this slide have been adapted from most public value chain, and this is actually the results of my research on public sector management in the UK, in the Netherlands, in Malaysia, and a small scale research on Indonesia. Yeah, let's just first we concentrate on the diagram on the left. Now we have the arrow denoting inputs, and the big triangle, which I call the public service provision. This is the not triangle, sorry, the rectangle. Within this rectangle, you'll see that I have split this into two. I have split it into one side covers the creation of policies and programs, and the other side covers the implementation of production of the services, which consists of the procedures and activities. Then we have this outputs. And then we have the small square representing users. This relatively small rectangle representing the other stakeholders, and outcomes. The end, we have the outcomes. Now, users, you know what users is. Users are people who actually use the services that is being provided, and other stakeholders are those people that are directly or indirectly impacted by the provision of the services, but they might not be using the services. Yeah. So I've split them into two: those directly using it, those who are not directly using it, but are either impacted by it, as well as those who are impacted by it, but indirectly. Now, so this is this diagram is the basic process that every public services go through. Now the inputs, let me just erase all these things again. Okay, now the input, the inputs are influenced and constrained by the authorizing environment. And if you can recall the slide on strategic triangle previously, this authorizing environment include and not limited to elected representatives, the regulations, the courts, the auditors. So, for example, if we can make it a simple example, the authorizing environment could be the central government or the local government, and they give mandate or direction to the public manager to do something. Let's say to improve transportation in East Java, in Java Timur. So they need to perbaiki transportation in Jawa Timur. So the policy on public transportation is created. So policy created, number one done. And one of the programs within this policy, because you can have one policy and then you have many programs under that policy, is to, for example, say, provide bus service from Surabaya and Tempurejo. Tempurejo or Tempurejo? So I don't know whether you know where Tempurejo is. I can see it in a map, but I've never been there. So now, if the policy, before it is established, the public manager in charge has invited, for example, public transport companies to help with designing the policy, then we say that the policy has been co-created with, in this case, the private sector. The same thing with the program. It could be created purely by the public manager or co-created with an external party. Okay. So once the policy and the program has been decided, the next action will be to implement or to produce the bus service. And in this diagram, I call this procedures and activities. And this again can be done by the public agency themselves or co-produced or co-implemented with external parties. Yeah. You notice that I have split the outputs and outcomes. In this example, one of the output could be building a road, or when the bus leaves the bus station, it emits greenhouse gases, and this is also considered as an output. But the outcome of the program is that the service enables people to travel from Surabaya to Tempurejo. Now, the user is straightforward. These are people who directly benefits from the service, in this case, the bus passengers. So the users will get on the bus and at the bus stop, and the bus will then travels along the route. And while they travel, it emits the greenhouse gases. So there is output there. And the other stakeholders, these are slightly more complicated, but the other stakeholders are people who, or groups of people, or even organizations that are indirectly affected by the provision of the bus service. For example, in order for them to get from Surabaya to Tempurejo, I forgot the name of the city, Tempurejo. So along the route, there might be people whose houses are impacted by the provision of the bus service, so they can take the bus to go somewhere. Or they don't want to take the bus, but still, because the roads are built, they have noise pollution, they have greenhouse pollution, they have a lot of traffic along that route. So they are not the users, but they are indirectly impacted by that provision of the company. So it could be an environmental concern. So an environment interest group about the trees being felled to build the road, or the greenhouse emission. So what else? It could also be an interest group for disabled people, for example. So normally, in order to get on the bus, then you need for people with wheelchairs, you need to have special stairs to go up. So it could be an interest for that, or for blind people, for example, because now a lot of buses are quiet buses. So they cannot hear the bus, which is dangerous to them. So it could be the other stakeholders could also be the interest group for disabled people. So if you think about it, you can even split the other stakeholder group to those that are dominant and also minor interest groups. if we recall my definition of public value in the previous slide, the perception of shared values consequential from direct and indirect dialogues with the public, which addresses the needs of the present and future generations. It implies that the public manager in charge of this program should be consulting with the users and other stakeholders when they are designing or developing the policy. And this could be done via many methods such as focus group or surveys. As you can see in the diagram, I have also included a dotted line from the service provision process to the users and the stakeholders. So this dotted line. Yeah. Now, what this means is that from my research, that there is communication from public manager or the agency that provides the service to the users and other stakeholders about the service. However, if you notice the arrow, the communication is often one way and not a dialogue. Remember what I said about the definition of the public value. It needs to be a dialogue. So the communication being a dialogue is important. Why? Because if other parties do not know that they have been heard and some kind of action have been taken based on what they have communicated, then they might not be willing to actually give inputs to what you want to do. But does that mean that as a public manager, you must do everything that they have said? No. But you do have to take them into consideration. The job, or one of the job of a public manager, is to put together the wants and the needs of the affected people, be it individuals, businesses, organizations, communities, and drill down on the collective or the shared needs and present them as public value. So for the public to continue participating in the consultations with the public managers, it is always important to close what I would call the feedback loop, so that the public do not feel like they have wasted their time and energy in these consultations. So just think about the times you had participated in some sort of discussions and nothing happened after that. All this while, we have been discussing the diagram on the left. Yeah. Now, let me erase this again. Now, the reason why I concentrate on the diagram on the left is because this is how the service provision process in Malaysia, and from my small scale research, Indonesia, has been. It's not bad. It is not bad at all. There is still some sort of communication with the public, but it could be improved. So the idea is, how do we improve this? Bear in mind, with COVID-19 and the Internet of Things, everything is rapidly changing, and many people's minds have also changed. And the traditional processes, perhaps people now are thinking more about how they can improve on traditional processes, and because of that, we should and could make a move to a more idealistic but also real service provision process on the right. So bear in mind, please, that my research was done a couple of years prior to COVID-19. And this is the results that I have now. But on the right, the diagram on the right is how the process is done in the Netherlands. And from my discussions with other colleagues, similar service provision process is done in Sweden as well. Now, the public managers that I interviewed in the Netherlands all explain about a system of consultation and dialogues with the users and what they call dominant stakeholders and minor interest groups. All of this are done prior to coming up with a new policy and program. As you can see in the diagrams, the arrows are two ways as well, rather than one way, compared to the ones on the left. So let me just highlight that again. So if you look at this arrows are two ways compared to one-way arrows here. Now, so what does that mean? So it means that the policies and programs will originate not just from top down, i.e. from the authorizing environment to the public manager and then down to the users, and inside out, which is again from within the public sector and then out to the public. But because of the two-way arrows, any policy and program can also originate from the user or from the dominant stakeholder or from the minor interest group or even outside in. Yeah, so it could be from the, which is outside in, or even from the public managers themselves up to the authorizing environment. So that there are more ways where policies and programs are created when you look at it in this way. Okay, now the culture, let me just erase this again. This culture of consultation is already embedded in their mindset, and it becomes automatic rather than enforced. Now, why do I say that? It's because when I ask them question, it's something that they tell me without realizing that this is a big deal, because they thought that everybody's doing it, because to them it's common sense. So it comes automatically. So is it possible for other countries to follow? Of course, I think you can't do it immediately, but with the right planning and commitment, I personally think anything is possible. Also, think about the fact that before maybe the last 5-6 years, there wasn't any communication from public managers or public agencies to the public about what they want to do. At least now there are communication where they are telling you what they're going to do. They're not listening to us yet, but they're telling us what they're going to do. So we just need to plan it so that there's another, us talking to them will be the next step. Okay. So if you like the concept of public value that we just talked about, and you want to ensure how you can partner or collaborate with stakeholders, my recommendations for the next steps are as follows. 1, as a public manager or even elected officials, always take a holistic overview of the outcomes that you want. You need to do what I call the scenario planning. So you in the simplified example that we talked about in the last slide, you think about the outcome of the policy, and it could be to connect rural areas with bigger towns and cities. And if you have created this policy because of the voices from the top, well, when I say voices from the top, I mean your voices, not voices from God, then what you are doing, I would assume, is you are creating it for the interest of the public or public interest. However, if you co-created the policy after listening to the views of the public, and again, the public means those affected directly and indirectly by that policy, after you have done your scenario planning, then the service that you're creating are something that they value. So what you are implementing is what we call public value. So visualize how the policy will play out to help you identify the stakeholders and plan a way to involve some of them, at least in the beginning or at the later stage of the process. Now, the second step that or the second recommendation, I put this here as nurturing environment. And what I mean by this is allowing and empowering the public manager to pursue policies and programs that are valued by the public rather than something thought out by the elected officials or by the individual manager, which is what normally called the to be of public interest. Having said that, I am not saying all policies or programs must be co-created and that public interest is no good. I'm not saying that. The idea could start with the intention of giving or ensuring public interest, but then they can then be molded to take into account public value. So when you have an idea, you talk to the public, and then you have public value. Third, is to encourage a collaborative environment. Most of the companies, most of you might be familiar with PPP or public-private partnership programs, which normally happens at the implementation of the project, implementation stage with private company. What I'm suggesting goes beyond that. The public sector should collaborate not just at the production stage of the project, but earlier, if it is at all feasible. As one of my interviews say, and this is a public manager, we are not the experts in everything, especially new technology or innovations. So we must listen to the experts. And who are the experts? The experts are the people who could be in private sector or third sector, which includes universities, which include NGOs, or even the community, that the villages, the towns, people that we are going to produce these services for. So I would even argue further. Let's go back to the example of the bus service. I mean, I don't take a bus and I don't live in Surabaya or Tempurejo. Yeah. How would I know that this bus service is really valuable other than in the theoretical sense? So common sense would say that the people who lives along the proposed bus route should be able to tell me whether the service is valuable to them. Yeah. Fourth, is we need to start having a public value mindset, not just what I value, but a collective value. Important for the public sector and civil servants, of course, but we can also start instilling this value in your children, you all in universities, because trying to achieve the diagram on the right in the last slide will take some time, perhaps generations before it becomes automatic. Initially, it might be a checklist. Yeah. So, but don't be discouraged. For now, to encourage participation, the public sector needs to introduce a transparent system where people can see what is happening and how things are processed. I'm not saying open up everything, but if you are the public manager and you're discussing a potential program with a specific organization, make it known. Not the IPs or the patent related things or the business, the important business things or the secrets, but who the organization is and in what capacity, for example. And finally, if you had engaged an organization or community in a consultative process, close the feedback loop. Share with them the report with the gist of the conversations and what will happen to the data that you have collected. And later on, what has happened to the data. So before that, so after the conversation, you feed something back to them. And then once you have done something, you then feed again onto what has happened to the data and the resulting policy and program. It might be that the ideas are not taken up, but at least they know the ideas have been forwarded for further deliberation. The idea is so that the participants know their knowledge and experience are valuable in the process of creating or implementing the policy and programs. Now, I know some of you are thinking too difficult to implement. Now, but even now, at every country, there is a number of public managers who are doing by their own accord some sort of collaboration with external parties. What we try to do now is to encourage such proactiveness and push them forward. You must also be thinking, what has this got to do with UN SDG? The public value concept as a strategic management method is invaluable to plan how to effectively tackle the development goals, as you will be listening to what the community considers as valuable instead of pushing things to the community which they do not need. The things we think are valuable to one community may not apply to another. For example, the needs of people living in Jakarta is different than the people living in Pontianak. So let's start the dialogue and listen to the needs of the people. I think you've had enough of me talking. Thank you very much for listening and participating. And I am happy to take any question, and I will try to answer them as honestly as possible. I have also included on this slide a symposium, a conference, an event that University of Glasgow will be hosting in December. Please, you're welcome to apply to present your paper on this symposium. We also have workshops on how to write papers for publication in international journals. So have a look at the website and let me know if you're interested. Thank you again, and terima kasih, and any question. I will stop my share now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramona, or I call you Bu Ramona from now on. I think this is a very, very insightful lecture or presentations. And I see that maybe some of here is, we're coming from a different disciplines, from different departments. I see my students here from visual communication design. And it's maybe I like to ask you a little bit question, because I think some of students here still digesting the lecture. What do you think, Dr. Buramona? It's like how to managing SGDS application. I mean, how to accelerate it, especially in our country. Indonesia is we're more the undeveloped country. What's different, and how to make it faster? Like,
Yes, I understand what you're saying. I think Indonesia is a fast developing nation. So it is extremely important for Indonesia to try and, I'm not saying meet everything, but try to address some of the SDG goals before the what do you call it, the gap between the rich and the poor becomes bigger. So it is actually very, very important for students of design to be involved in this. The reason why I'm saying this is because a lot of, if we want to talk about listening to people, the public value concept, it means that you are not coming up with a solution at the front. You need to listen to what the stakeholders, the other stakeholders, so the stakeholders could be the users or the dominant interest groups or anyone else, and then how do you design to put all this data together so that you can come up with the shared value, which is the public value. This is extremely difficult. And I think a lot of governments stop trying to do this because it's a very difficult process. You cannot do it from the normal design where, you just take in. So it really requires some new innovative way of designing a system of collecting all this data. And I'm not talking about big data here. I'm just saying like collective data from the consultative programs. So in Indonesia, it is extremely important because geographically, Indonesia is a very difficult country to run compared to smaller countries like the Netherlands or like the UK. We're very small, and where the UK is one island or two islands. Yeah, so Indonesia has thousands and thousands of islands. So and they're very spread out. It is more difficult to address. So how do we do this? I would say it starts with the people at the university here to think about how it is you can help the public sector, so the agencies, the government, to pull information from people. The best is, of course, continuous information. But let's start one step at a time. So if you want to do something, how do you pull that information? How do you design it so that the people who sees that their information that they give to the public agency are being used? So it doesn't just go to a black hole, but they are being used. Now, not all the data that we get will be good data, because some people might think like, I want to do A, but most people don't want to do A. So that value is not shared. So we want to look at the shared value, and the shared value should not be the value of the person in charge. Yeah. So how do you make it so that it's also independent of biasness? So it's like a research, and but helping the government come up with policies and programs. So I think it is extremely important, especially for people of these students of design, to start thinking about it, because I think they can help tremendously governments, and not just governments, but also public private sectors and NGOs, to try and see how they can collaborate better together. Does that help answer some of your question?
Yeah. So what I take is from your answer is from specifically the design. We can have to design the information so it's more effectively used, especially by
Yes.
government.
Yes.
Or
Yeah. But not just used, but they also feed back the loop to the people that have given the information, that it has been taken into consideration or it has been taken forward. I think a lot of countries who tried to do this initially, some people initially participate, but then they think that nothing has been done with the information they give, so they don't participate in the next one. So trying to make sure that we do the feedback loop, always keeping people in the know, if I can think. Of course, it is also it's not easy, because there are some secrets that government needs to keep. Yeah, we especially developing nations, we still have secrets that we don't want everybody to know. In most in developed nations, there is this thing called freedom of information. Anybody can ask anything, and they have to come tell them within 2 weeks. Is that the best way of doing it? I don't know. I mean, I'm still on the fence with that. I think, but without going too advanced or too radical, we can still keep the secrets, but just making sure that people know that they are being listened to and that things are being done.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
I think it's transparency information. It's always has a side effect.
Yes, because it impacts the trust that they have. So I think that one of the biggest problem in a lot of developing nation is the trust in the people who are managing public services. Not the trust in the politicians, but in the people managing the public services.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I think while we are waiting for a question, and maybe myself have a more question for you.
Sure.
I think I assume that you say that politics plays a huge role in one of the huge role in achieving an ideal public value, and then maybe from many values that you mentioned before, like this community and maybe the other private sector stakeholder.
Mhm.
Maybe from our own experiences that we are working with community, maybe more the students, academia.
Yeah.
We're working strongly, have a strong tie with the community so far. But do you have any insights or about what is the strongest values, for example, to accommodate first to achieve a like the ideal public values, or maybe for example you have to strengthen the community or the government, or which one do you have
Yeah.
any? Yeah.
I understand what you're asking me. How do we measure public value, right? Now there are there is no one way of measuring public value. There are many scholars have suggested ways of improving. For example, the balance scorecard. You've heard of the balance scorecard, right? So they have the public value balance scorecard. But what is difficult for when you want to measure public value is because we are used to valuing on a monetary basis, right? So everything is monetary. Does it make money? That's basically what we normally think. Now, when it comes to public value, sometimes even when the thing does not make money now, it might make money later in the future. So, which is why the definition of public value, it's not the needs for now, but also for the future. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Let's take on this COVID example, right? Government buys a lot of the vaccines. In the UK government, before any of the company managed to successfully produce vaccination, they were just trying to come up with idea, just testing. The UK government bought and paid vaccines from 7 companies. Now, they don't know whether these vaccines that they have paid for will be approved. So they don't know whether this is good vaccine, but they take the risk and paid for it. Now, a few months later, 1 year later, we get a lot of vaccines. Yeah, we have so many vaccines that we are now giving away the vaccines that we don't need. But there's also a lot of money being wasted, if I can say that, because of the 7 companies that they have paid for, only 4 companies have been approved. 3 companies have not been approved. Yeah, so the vaccine that they're still trialing the vaccine, it has not been approved for use. So my question is this a waste of money? Right?
Yeah.
Now, if you're looking at it from short term, you would say, yeah, so it's a waste of money. But if you look at it from the longer term, it's not a waste of money, because there are more protection for the people. So it gives more value to the people going forward in the future. But in the short term, it is a real waste of money because, you pay all this money, there's nothing coming out of it. So when people are trying to develop something, what the public managers need to think about is, don't just think about, and this is a typical developing nations public managers thinking, don't just think about your current boss. Your current boss is the current political, the elected representative. Don't just think about your current boss, because your current boss may only be there for 5 years. Yeah, then later they will change. And if you want to follow the bosses every time, you will not be able to really give value to the people that you're supposed to serve. So as a public manager, you need to remember that, you also, not that you also, your main shareholder are the community. Yeah, so the community is the most important factor. The value that the community holds should be the most important factor. Now, you need to look at whether because you want to hold the values that the community share, now it means that you have to spend more money now. Then it's similar to the problem with the COVID vaccination, right? You spend more money now, but in the future, you will reap on it. So my answer to you, I think the most important value would be what the community values. So, but how do you get it past your bosses? So that's when you need to change the mindset. So in the Netherlands, the only reason I'm using the Netherlands as an example is because I did the research in the Netherlands, and this is how they did it. Is they have this way of evaluating. So they don't just do cost benefit analysis, which we normally do in any project. We do cost benefits analysis, right? They also take into consideration the qualitative aspects. So this qualitative aspects is not monetized. So you cannot really put a money value to it. So, and they have this process where even though the monetary value is negative. So in normal cost benefit analysis, if the value is negative, then you don't do that. If you're not making money, you do not do that. But they have this process whereby if you still think the qualitative aspect of it, or later on in the future, that this is going to be of more benefit, then you need to explain why, and you can still go on with the project. So they don't do like how we normally do, where we only base it on monetary value. So that is how they do it. Can we do that? I'm sure we can do that as well. How to justify qualitatively. It's a matter of learning how to do it.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer.
No problem.
It's interesting. So it's like maybe the challenge that we are the developing countries, because we change bosses every 5 years, and maybe most of our policies here is a short-term strategy. So yeah, this is maybe the things that we face today.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if we have a longer term strategy, then this would probably work better. But the more importantly is we need to start, or the public sector need to start thinking that their responsibility is to the people and not just to the elected politicians. So the main responsibility is to the people. So they need to plan for the people, and that's the difficult part that we have in developing nations. I believe. In the developed nations, they have the same issue as well. They change every year, and the ministers want certain things, blah blah blah. So they have the same issues, similar issues, but I think it's more it's bigger in developing nations than here.
Okay. Is there anyone who want to ask question directly to Bu Ramona?
Yeah. You can you can ask me, boleh tanya soalan dalam bahasa Indonesia juga jika mau. My Indonesian is really bad. So you can ask me questions in Indonesian as well. Jangan malu-malu.
And here we are in 5 p.m. right now. So what time is it in Glasgow? It's still
Glasgow it's coming to 11 in the morning.
it's still fresh. Some of the students here it's 5 p.m.
Long day. Yeah.
Maybe. Okay. Maybe I think we have go to the end of the session, but I think that's I try to make a wrap up what about Bu Ramona say. So there is maybe that's the need for holistic overview in achieving public values and how to make a nurturing and collaborative environment so we can achieve the hopefully ideal public values for us. And maybe every nation has its their own challenges, I believe, and maybe we have to think about the longer term strategy instead of just monetizing for the shorter term. Okay, I think thank you very much, Bu Ramona, for this for your presentations. As I believe it's very insightful for all of us here. And then I will give it the time back to Oriza.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Norina. And thank you very much to Dr. Ramona Blanes for the excellent lecture today. Thank you as well to Dr. Norina for moderating this insightful session. Please give applause to our speaker and moderator by using the Zoom reaction feature. Okay, furthermore, we would like to present a certificate awarding to our speakers and also our moderator today. First, this is the certificate presented for Dr. Ramona Blanes as the speaker for today's guest lecture.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih. And next, this is the certificate presented for Dr. Norina Orta Darmawanti as the moderator.
Terima kasih.
Okay, once again, thank you very much to Dr. Ramona Blanes for the very informative lecture. And thank you as well to Dr. Norina Orta Darmawanti for moderating today's guest lecture series on SDGs. We would like to firstly apologize to Dr. Ramona that the certificate have not been signed yet by our rector due to the COVID lockdown. Kindly wait for the signed certificates, both in soft file and hard copy, which will be soon updated by the committee. Okay, before we end our session today, we invite all participants as well as the honorable speaker and moderator to take a group photo. To all participants, please turn on your cameras. Okay, I will wait for a few minutes before taking the screenshot. Okay, to all participants, kindly turn on your camera so that we can take a picture together. Okay, so I can see that some participants have already turned on their cameras. Okay, I will start taking the picture now. For the first slide, 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, and then the second slide, 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, and lastly, the third, 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you very much to all participants for turning on your cameras. I have taken the group picture already. Okay, now that we finished with the group photo, for the participants, please fill the feedback form through the link bit.ly/feedbackgls that you will also see through the Zoom chat room. The deadline for filling the feedback form is 1 hour after we finish the session. We want to remind you that the participants who will get the stamp are the participants who come on time, join this event until the end, and also fill the feedback form. Before we close the event, we would like to remind all of you that we will have another GLS on SDGs tomorrow with 2 streams. In stream 1, the topics discussed are Life Below Water with the speaker, Dr. Rahman Abdul Rahim from University Technology Malaysia. And in the second stream, the topics discussed are the IoT for Smart Sustainable Cities and Communities with the speaker, Associate Professor Shukor Sanim from University Technology Mara. And the second topic is Complexities and Challenges of Coastal Management in Indonesia with the speaker, Dr. Clio Sambodo from Institut Teknologi 10 November. Other than the guest lecture series on SDGs, ITAS Global Engagement also offers many other international events you can take part in. One of them being the joint workshop for global engineers in Asia and beyond, dedicated to provide a platform for young engineers and researchers in Asia to develop their innovative minds and ideas. On the next slide, you can see the program details. Please take note that this program is free and the registration deadline is on Monday, 28 June 2021. For more information, please visit our Instagram account at ITAS International Office or contact Miss Fifi as written on the post. So make sure you don't miss another insightful guest lecture tomorrow, as well as our many other programs. Finally, we have reached the end of today's guest lecture series, and we sincerely apologize for any mistakes we may have made in presenting as the Master of Ceremony and Committee. I, Ori, as MC, bids farewell. Good afternoon, and we will see you again at another GLS on SDGs.
See you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you,
Terima kasih, Bu
Dr. Ramona
Ramona.
Blanes. Terima kasih, Bu Norina,
kasih,
Bu
Pak
Nina
Alvin.
Marta, Pak Alvin, Mbak Desi. Terima kasih, Mbak Desi.
Terima kasih juga Pak Irfan.
Terima kasih semua.
Terima kasih Bu
See ya.
Nurina.
Thank
Do
you,
contact
Dr.
me
Ramona.
if you need anything. See ya. Bye.
Bye, thank
Thank you,
you.
Doctor.
Teman-teman panitia, terima kasih. Ori dan Samara, terima kasih. Let me end the session in a 5, 4, 3,